Hello. So I got a notification on my phone for a comment from one of my older videos, and this was a comment that asked me if I can do an updated version on fast nining relative to the set 14. So I decided, you know what? I needed to do a video today anyways, so let's answer the questions. Let's go through the comments and let's do a fast 9 guide to appease at least one viewer from my channel that was checking out some of my older guides. If you like my content, please make sure to like and subscribe because I do daily TFT guides on my channel. I did already talk a little bit about fast nining and some of the conditions for it, but what I want to do is I want to kind of talk about this comment because set 14 does have a couple differences from the past, and it's like, you know, referring to the set 13 guide that I put out, and this will just be the updated one. So let's just read through the comments. This is from Fabiano. Hello, and thank you for watching my video, first of all. And second of all, let's read the comment. I know the meta shifted a lot from last set, but this patch where we are now is very odd. I don't know if it's odd, but sure. We have resources, but we're hardly contested every game. I don't know if he means so hard, like hard contested, like everybody's contesting you, or if you're like very rarely contested. To stay on level 8, spending gold rerolling, not finding what you need is becoming a sad trend. I don't agree with the second paragraph, but basically the next thing is like, hey, could you talk about like this with respect to set 14, doing a guide. So I'll come back to the comment, but in general terms, fast nining, a lot of the things stay the same. So if you checked out the previous guide, this is going to be very similar. A lot of the slides are going to be the same. I think I just tweaked a couple of them, but I'm going to give set 14 examples for this one. So of course, our sub goal, 10,000 subs, RP giveaway. If we make it there, we make it there. Let's try our best to get there. Anyways, let's talk about some typical strategies that exist in TFT, which we talked about a lot on this channel already. There's a reroll guide that I made that talks about playing around reroll units. There's a level 8 or 4 cost guide where you're playing around 4 cost units. But then there's this like secret last one that a lot of times people try to go for, and that's like the super greed, and I'm gonna go straight to level 9 and everything's gonna be wonderful and I'm just gonna win the game because I'm level 9 and I hit everything. This is a rare option. It does not matter what the set is. It does not matter how much resources you have. It is rarely the correct decision to try and immediately make it to level 9. The reason is that a lot of it is dependent on your lobby and what other people are doing, which we'll explain a lot throughout this video. A lot of times when you're trying to greed for a fast 9, it usually comes from you having a very high roll or good opener. If you have a huge HP lead and a huge gold lead from your stage 2 and your stage 3, then you can afford to take the necessary risks to then postpone when you roll all your gold and try and make it to level 9 as fast as possible to try and get access to higher cost units. Usually what happens is you're trying to cap out around 5 costs and do that a little bit earlier. That's the whole point of fast nining and not just getting to level 9 whenever, but a lot of times this is limited to high rolling, which we'll talk about in this video. Your strategy can change throughout the game. I want that to be very clear for everybody. You can start by thinking you might want to angle reroll or level 8 or fast 9, but you always have to adapt to see what's going on in the actual game in order to fully realize the full potential of your placements and all of that. Don't just commit to something for no reason. Also, I think I'm a little bit too zoomed in. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So what is fast 9? We're trying to define it. Basically, you're trying to go level 9 as fast as possible. You're trying to get there ASAP. And then you're going to roll most of your gold on level 9. The idea is that you're not going to be rolling that much on level 8 or at a lower level to stabilize. Instead, you're saving all your gold and you want to do your major roll down where you try and hit all of your units and all of your upgrades on level 9 because it gives you better odds for the higher cost units. A lot of times when you're fast nining, it often is that you're level 9 on stage 4 or very early on stage 5, and these are usually considered to be fast 9. Of course, you know, you can be the fastest 9 and get to level 9 on stage 2. I don't know how you'll do it, but you know what I mean? Like, it's all relative speaking, but usually being level 9 on stage 4 at any point in stage 4 is usually considered to be pretty fast in general terms. So when should you be fast nining? This is the big question. I think a lot of people always ask themselves. Usually it's limited to if you're high rolling in your game. It's very hard to say that I'm going to fast 9 from a very bad spot. There are certain times you can do it from like a Cypher cash out, or if you have a scaling augment or something like that, where you just collect all your gold and then you just try and like, you know, pivot one turn on a dime, instantly teleport to 9, try and upgrade everything and just win out. But typically you're in a high roll enough spot that you have the resources in order to get there, which we'll talk about a little bit after. Additionally, it can work really well on specific encounters and augment combos. So for example, Scuttle Puddle, or anything where it gives you an influx of a massive amounts of gold, in general will make it a lot easier for you to make it to that level 9 threshold, because you're just going to have so much extra resources in the game. This is something that also comes into play with hacks and different hacked loot orbs and stuff like that, where you just get pumped with resources that makes it more available to Fast 9. But I'll talk about it a little bit later. That shouldn't alter your decision too much of your general game plan, because a lot of it comes down to, relatively speaking, how strong you are to the rest of the lobby and whether you can afford to greed in the necessary rounds in order to make it there. Additionally, this is one part that I need to make very clear. I don't like, the reason I kind of didn't make an updated set 14 version of this guy was 2 reasons. One, I was trying to rework it a little bit, and 2, I always get a lot of comments whenever I talk about Fast 9ing. Usually Fast 9ing comes really easily if your lobby is not punishing. Now here I put in brackets bad players. I'm not putting a rank associated with it, but I'm saying in general, if there are players that are not punishing you in the lobby for greeting your gold, then you will more easily make it to level 9. This is where sometimes there's a little bit of a disjoint between different people's experiences in the game, because your rank does play a role into it. If you're, iron and you just started the game and there's lots of for fun players, a lot of times the boards are weaker, items aren't slammed, people aren't like doing the board, there's people AFK or they left the game, right? Compare that to, if you make it to Grandmaster. In Grandmaster, there's usually not going to be an AFK player, and most of the time all the boards are going to be very strong at all stages in the game. There's very few, unless there's somebody that's trying purposely to lose every single round, the boards are going to be relatively threatening and powerful, that if you just plop yourself in there and you try and overgreed, you'll get severely punished for it. You can fall anywhere on that line. You could even be challenger. I don't know why you would watch a guide if you're challenger, but by all means, even if you're challenger, it can come down to whether or not your lobby, no matter the rank, has players that are not punishing you. If the players in your lobby are not punishing you, then of course it makes more sense to Fast 9, because you're getting, even if you're not in a high roll spot, you're getting put in a spot where you have the resources to make it there more easily. So I want to make that very clear. When I say that it's a sometimes food and you should rarely do it and you shouldn't necessarily Fast 9, I'm assuming competency. I'm assuming you're playing in a lobby where you're gonna get punished, and I think that's a better assumption to have than to look at your lobby and be like, nah, I'm committing to Fast 9, I think these people are morons and I'm gonna be the one that wins out, because that's not a valid strategy. So that's where it comes from. That's what I'm going to explain it. I'm not trying to insult anybody or anything like that, but I'm just trying to say, if you disagree with some of the things that I say about why I don't think you should often Fast 9, I don't know, you're probably playing in lobbies where people are not punishing you. Anyways, it's often very bait. That's the main thing about Fast 9. The main takeaway I want you to have whenever you think about Fast 9 is that it's often very bait. You should very rarely be committing to such a strategy because it's very risky, and I'll explain why a little bit. But anyways, a lot of times your best spot for Fast 9ing is usually when you have high econ encounters and you have a good econ augment. Without an econ augment, you can basically kiss those dreams goodbye, but there are really good situations where you can very easily on stage 2 commit to a Fast 9 strategy. And that's like, if you see something like Level Up, if you're like Scuttle Puddle with Level Up, you can be level 9 on stage 4, like 4-2. When people do their level 8 roll down, you'll be doing a level 9 roll down. It's actually very efficient. It's very plausible. Similarly, upward mobility, and then here I put going long. There are other econ augments. Here I'm just putting all the prismatic ones because these are the flashy ones that make a lot of sense. There are other prismatics. There are other situations, of course, but what I'm trying to say is if you have a large amount of gold and you have a good econ augment that can scale you up to a high level very easily with that amount of gold, then you can Fast 9 and you can commit to the strategy a lot earlier. A lot of times you can see Level Up on 2-1, and if you're in Scuttle Puddle, you can often look at that and without having to worry too much about what happens later in the game, know that you'll have enough resources to reliably make it to level 9 at a much accelerated pace. Additionally, why should you go level 9? Well, a lot of times it's to cap your board out with legendary units. There's a lot of these high cost units that take a large amount of they take a large amount of gold, but they also need a large amount of shop odds in order to actually work, or in order to actually hit them. So a lot of times, like if you're trying to play around a 5 cost unit, or if you really need a 5 cost unit for your comp in order to tie it together, that's a good incentive to go to level 9, because you want to be able to find that unit instead of having to roll at a lower level for them. Additionally, because of that, you have the higher odds. That's what I was saying, they go hand in hand. You want to play legendaries, you want higher odds for hitting those units. Additionally, with certain comps, it also brings out the potential for that comp, because there are comps that are a little bit limited, either by space, because they need to hit more synergies in order to fit out the whole board, or they need certain units in order to actually make them work or function in the best way. So the main question you want to ask yourself, this is something that's really important. How much stronger does going 9 make me? This is always a question you have to ask. Whenever you want to go to level 9, you have to ask yourself, what is the reason for me to go level 9? Because you have to be able to justify every decision, right? TFT, in its core, it's a strategy game. You can treat it like a card game. You can treat it like anything, right? But the main thing is that you always have to justify the decisions that you're making. That you're making. So how much stronger does going level 9 make me? That's the big question you have to ask yourself. And then you have to also ask yourself, is it better to use my gold at a lower level? These two questions in tandem matter a lot in your position relative to the lobby. If you're in a spot where you can easily convert to a win out, you might want to greed more. Go level 9, roll your gold for higher cost units, because if you plunder all your gold at a low level, you lose that chance to cap yourself really high. However, if you're in not a commanding spot in the lobby and you're just trying to salvage the game, wouldn't it be better to just salvage the game? How is greeding salvaging the game? That's not salvaging, that's throwing the game. Things like these matter a lot, so it's always relative to how you are doing in the lobby. And then with these two questions, you have to also assess, just in terms of the risks, can I actually make it to level 9? Calculate how much gold does it count to make it to level 9, and additionally, how much gold will I have once I make it to level 9? It's not like, you know, the high school hallway where you're just like slapping the top of the door when you pass it through, right? When you make it to level 9, you need to have resources there. It's not a matter of just achieving it. It's not a matter of just like, I got there. You need to have the gold still to actually hit the units in the first place. So you have to account for the amount of gold it takes to get to level 9 and have the resources in order to hit the units. I'll give you two examples here. So we're going to talk a little bit about high tempo and low tempo lobbies. So this was something that's a little bit forgotten. I think I had a guide talk about lobby tempo that I didn't do yet on this channel, but things are a little bit out of order because I want to answer the comment that I got today. Part of the reason why this one's a little bit out of sync. But in general, if you're playing in a lobby that is relatively high tempo, this usually happens in like Scuttle Puddle or where there's a lot of resources. What ends up happening is that players are either really strong or there's rerollers in the lobby, and preserving HP becomes really hard, right? On your stage 2 and your stage 3, you're just going to be losing a lot of fights and it's going to be miserable. If you're losing a lot of fights and you're already in a weak spot, you don't want to fast 9. You usually want to either commit to a reroll, salvage the game, commit to a 4-cost comp that's uncontested, and try and hit your units just so that you stabilize. Because in order to make it to level 9, a lot of times you're going to have to greed a couple rounds, and every round that you greed is going to be more rounds that you're losing HP relative to the lobby, and it's not even guaranteed that you win out, because if somebody else hits some crazy shit, or if they hit a really good board, or if they make it to level 9 eventually, if you don't have enough HP to convert the win, you can still lose the game. Second strongest person in the lobby doesn't mean that you get second place. Second strongest person in the lobby means you're going 8th if you have only 1 life and you fight the strongest person in the lobby. That's a fact of TFT. So it doesn't matter how strong your board is. If you're not the strongest person in the lobby, you need some HP to work with. Always, always, always. Additionally, if you're in a low tempo lobby, it's the complete opposite. If you have a board that's relatively strong, other people are weak, and they might spike later, but you are in a good commanding spot where you have the HP lead. Now you have a lot of wiggle room. A lot of times this is a potential spot to fast 9, because if the whole lobby is really weak and you're the person that's really strong, that means you're high rolling. That means you're the high roller. If you're the high roller, then you might want to spike with the people later in the game, because you've already established like dominance. You've already been stronger than them for most of the game. So as long as you match your spike with the other players, you'll be good. This is something that happens a lot when people are over greeding. Sometimes you find yourself in a lobby where multiple people are just trying to greed. They're not rolling their gold, they're playing maximum econ, in those type of lobbies, if you are the one with the HP lead, you can also afford to greed, because if they're not rolling their gold, you can wait and bide your time and wait to roll your gold, and then by making it to level 9, have a greater chance of hitting more meaningful units, upgraded 5 costs. They can actually cap your board extremely high. So let's do this example. I did this in the last video. I'm going to do it again here. Now, warning to anybody who's watching right now, this will be a flashbang. I do not know how to change the screen from white to black. It does not work with dark mode. My browser is on dark mode. It does not work. So I'm going to show it. It's going to flashbang you. Be ready, okay? Bang, flashbang. So what this is a TFT rolling odds calculator. I don't like to post the website, but basically just Google it if you really want to. Just look up TFT rolling odds calculator. And what this does is it estimates based on like what level you are and how much gold you're rolling and how many copies of the units are out, what your odds are of hitting the unit. I don't want you guys to get too caught up on this. This is merely for visualization of this exact example that I'm showing here. This is not a website that you need to look at too much. It's mostly just for visualization and more for like fun facts. But anyways, let's go through it. So here it's on set 13. They don't have it updated for set 14. It will be a little bit different, but not much. But just in general, I'm just going to try and show you, like I said, for visualization. Let's say we're rolling for 5 cost units. We want to hit a 5 cost unit. And let's say there's none of them out of the pool and nobody's playing 5 cost. We're trying to be fast 9, right? And let's say we go to level 9, right? If we go to level 9, what do you think is a good amount of gold to roll down for your board? Typically, you'll hear something like, oh, on level 8, whatever, the typical number people will give you is around 50 gold to have to roll down. 50 gold is a decent amount. If you look at 50 gold, one of the things I want to show you is it's really likely that you're going to find one copy of that 5 cost. This is why people fast 9. They fast 9 because they want to teleport to level 9, find the copy of the 5 cost that they need to spike their board, or if it's a really broken 5 cost, they can play around it and just win out. Finding one copy of the 5 cost is not very hard. You have a really high chance of hitting it. Finding 2 copies, 3 copies, very low chance. It is a very low chance that you're going to upgrade the 5 cost and that's going to be like your main carry. It's very high roll for that to happen. Now, we're talking about fast 9 here. So, of course, you have to also upgrade your board. You have to have the gold to get to level 9. You have to have the gold to upgrade the rest of your units, right? Like, you know, you're not just going to play one 5 cost, right? You need to either upgrade that 5 cost, which you have a low chance of hitting 3 copies of them on your first roll down if you only have 50 gold, but you also need to upgrade your front line. You need to upgrade the other unit. This is 50 gold of rolling. We didn't even count that the 5 cost costs 5 gold, right? To find 3 5 costs, that's 15 gold. So that means you're only rolling 35 gold. Like, you know what I mean? That's without upgrading the other units. Even if you're playing like 1 cost front line, you still need like 3 gold to put in the 1 cost front line unit. This is where a lot of people get like hyperinflated on like how likely it is to hit certain things. This is saying I'm rolling 50 gold on level 9. This is not even counting that it takes like 70 gold to get from level 8 to level 9. And you can see you're not in some magical Disneyland where you're going to hit like, you know, Samira 2, Kabuko 2, what's his name? Garen 2, what's the other guy? Zach 2, and you're just going to win out. It's actually very unlikely that you hit the upgrades. So a lot of times, if your board is really unstable and you have a very low amount of lives, it's going to take you a while or an absurd amount of gold because you're going to need like insane numbers, like 80 gold. You still don't have like within good odds of hitting your upgraded units a lot of the time. Of course, like, you know, maybe some people at 5 cost and it can pump you up a little bit, but it's not that likely that you're just going to do a roll down and hit a bunch of upgraded 5 costs. You're just going to hit 1 or 2 copies of the units that you desire most. That's typically what ends up happening. So I just want to explain, that's why I always say you can't just decide if you're going to be going level 9 or not, because you need so much gold that it's like an absurd amount in order to actually get there and do primarily or most of your rolling there. A lot of times you're going to adapt to a hybrid strategy where you're going to roll a lot on level 8 looking for 4 costs, right? Then you're going to hit your 4 cost, you're going to find your 4 cost upgrade, and then if you have a lot of excess gold, you then decide to go level 9. Like if I hit this 2-star 4 cost really early and I still have like 50 gold, I make interest and I go level 9 at the beginning of stage 5. That's typically what happens. It's completely reliant on you actually hitting your board in the first place. So let's talk about some examples of comps that really want a fast 9. So I'm gonna go tactics.tools, excuse me, didn't have the team builder open. So one of the common examples of a fast 9 comp right now is AMP. There's multiple ways of playing AMP, but AMP a lot of times, if you have to play a comp that wants to be level 9, AMP is one of those comps. Why is that? Well, AMP has a lot of things going for it that makes it extremely potent and extremely strong, but one of the main things is how much it spikes with 5 AMP. 5 AMP you cannot hit with an emblem, you have to hit by finding a Samira. So it falls the criteria of I want to be able to make it to level 9 and find one copy of Samira. And if you find one copy of Samira, you can cap incredibly high. Additionally, it caps really high with a lot of other 5 costs. Zac and Garen, for example, work really well. Garen can spread strategies to the whole board, which gives them a huge amount of damage or durability. Zac can scale really effectively if you hit him early. So a lot of times you're trying to fast 9, find a Zac, find a Samira, and then for the rest of the game, you're just staying level 9, scaling up your Zac, finding the upgrades, and hitting everything else. This board is also really stable with the 5 AMP once you hit a Samira, so hitting a Samira is extremely powerful. And notice I say a Samira, not Samira 2. Once you hit Samira 2, a lot of times this comp is one of the highest placing comps in the game. It has a huge win percentage, and you can often win out from situations like this. So this is an example of a comp where you really want a fast 9. Another example of a comp that you might want a fast 9. Of course, you could play a reroll variation. That's for another video. I'm just trying to say the fast 9 version is something that's very popular. Another one is playing around Urgot. This happens a lot if you have Boombot emblem. If you have Boombot emblem, 6 Boombot is extremely powerful, but it needs an Urgot, right? You need a Urgot. You need one Urgot. If you don't have the Urgot, you can't make it to level 9. Or sorry, if you don't have the Urgot, you can't make it to 6 Boombot. So a lot of times when you're playing this type of comp, you try and fast 9 around it, and then usually you're playing some mixture of Vex with Executioner and Divinicorpse, and you can play Rapid Fires and all sorts of other stuff. But either way, this is a board that is extremely powerful if you hit the Urgot. Now, we didn't do our Boombot guide. I'm actually going to make a Boombot guide sometime next week. I just need to get some practical experience with it. I haven't had a chance to play it, so I don't want to make you a false guide. I want to have at least 1 or 2 games on it. But the idea is that this board can cap extremely high. Whenever you're playing a board that wants to be fast 9, you need a board that spikes really hard off of the legendaries, because that's like the whole point of making it to level 9. And you also want to be super stable with 1 copy of them. If you can just have a huge power spike with that 1 copy of the unit, then you're going to be in a really commanding spot, and you won't have to worry too much about finding the upgrades, which is usually the problem that makes things a little bit worse on level 9. Additionally, let's talk about like upgrading versus fast 9. So sometimes, like, with this type of board, you're kind of doing an all or nothing strat. A lot of times if you take Boombot emblem and you're trying to play around this line, if you're not rerolling Fiddle or rerolling Kog'Maw, you don't really have a stable level 8 board, so it's more like an all or nothing type of situation. There are other comps that don't really need to fast 9, and that's like, we'll talk about the bread and butter one. I use this example a lot because I feel like it's a more beginner friendly comp, but this is an example I talk about a lot in this video, or in these video series of guides, which is Marksman Vanguard. Marksman Vanguard is very complete on level 8. The power spikes that you get on level 9 aren't that massive compared to hitting all of the upgraded units that you want to hit. So for example, this board becomes really powerful if you have a Leona 2-star, Xayah 2-star, and an Aphelios 2-star. If you don't have them upgraded, a lot of times it becomes really awkward to stabilize your board, because if you have, like, for example, Leona 1-star and Xayah 1-star and Aphelios 2-star, and you don't decide not to roll and you decide to fast 9, it feels a little bit awkward because you're really just looking for like Aurora or Garen, or like sometimes like a Zac, but like these units don't scale you or do a lot for your board. They could help you out a lot. Like, obviously, if you have an Aurora 2, go for it. If you have a Zac 2, go for it. They're obviously going to cap higher. But what I'm trying to say is that a lot of times, especially if you're not stable, it makes a lot of sense to roll on level 8, because the gold that it takes for you to get to level 9, you can instead use that gold to hit Leona 2 and Xayah 2 a lot of the time. And sometimes if you try to like push it too far, this comp also doesn't cap very high, right? If you make it to level 9 and you have Leona 1, Xayah 1, and you just throw in an Aurora 1, it's not like Boombot example that I showed you, and it's not like the AMP example that I showed you. An Aurora 1 isn't going to salvage this board in any way if you don't have the upgraded 4 cost as your main core. It's really important to understand these things. I try my best to explain on my how to play series whenever I say how to play X comp on my channel, when I think comps like really spike or need certain units to work. So, but a lot of it comes from trial and error. So like you can check out those videos if you need some help with it. But a lot of times, like I said, it's trial and error, and you just have to have a good understanding of what each comp wants in order to do really well. In this case, the board is very complete on level 8, so a lot of times it makes sense to roll for upgrades. Lastly, so the conditions, before I get into conditions, I just want to talk a little bit about this a little bit more, just to try and drill it home. A lot of times when you're rolling for your board, you have to think to yourself, what are my prospects versus the other people's prospects? Let's say we're looking at 2 different boards, and let's say somebody is playing Amp, right? And they already have a Samira, like they're super high roll, they're giga winning, they have like the insane spot of Doom, and they're gonna win for sure. And let's say there's another person who is a Cypher cash out, right? Cypher cash out. I'm trying to give like very hyperbolized example. Let's say there's another person in the lobby that's Cypher cash out. If I look at this type of board, and I look at these 2, I see one board that caps really high, Amp board. It's extremely hard to outcap this board, right? It's just one of the strongest boards in the current landscape of the game, but it's very risky because you either have to have a really good reroll spot or you have to be able to fast 9. So it's a very sometimes food. And then you have something like Cypher, where they can just be in an instant win because they got a cash out and they're just giga strong. If I'm playing a board where I don't have my upgrades, let's say I'm playing like Zeri MF, right? Zeri MF dual carry with a Sejuani, right? I'm playing a board that could cap high, but it doesn't necessarily cap that high. Another board that is really stable so long as I hit my upgraded units. If I'm angling this board, and these are what my items dictate, am I going to outcap these players? Yes or no? Probably not. I'm going to be honest. Probably not. Now, I know that's going to sound really sad. Like, you know, like, I want to win. Why would I play a game just to lose? It's like, well, sometimes in TFT, you got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them, right? It's like poker in that sense, kind of. But you know what I mean. If I'm not in a spot where I'm going to win out, it makes very little sense to greed a lot of the time. It makes more sense to use my gold in order to upgrade my units. Because you have to understand, flashbang warning, flashbang warning. Oh no, I got rid of it. Okay, anyways, the odds calculator I was gonna show you guys. Let me try and find it. Whatever. But with the odds calculator, remember what I showed you? It takes a lot of gold to roll on level 9 and actually hit the upgraded units. If you're not playing a board that's spiking particularly strong on a particular 5 cost, and you don't have that much gold anyways, you're not gonna hit. And it's going to be very miserable. So what ends up happening a lot of times is that the 70 or 80 gold it takes from you to go from level 8 to level 9, that's 70 or 80 gold that you can use to roll down, which gives you like insane odds of hitting your upgraded units. You have like a 60 plus, I forget the exact number, but I showed you like rolling 80 gold on level 8. You get insane odds of actually finding the upgrades that you need, which makes you stronger. So if these players are greeding, they might have a win condition later, but you know that they'll outpace you, they'll outcap you. You can just play for the placements, get a third, maybe even high roll and get a second if they kill each other off because they have to fight each other eventually. And that's how you can usually get out a lot of placements. Chasing a fast 9 or chasing a level 9 could often grief you for that reason. Now, of course, there are sentiments where you want to maybe go for level 9. The main thing that I should always say, the main time that you decide to go level 9, obviously if you're high rolling, but the second way that you want to go level 9 is if you're not rolling for anything in particular. So let's say you're playing a board like, let's just use the Zeri example again, because I just showed it to you, right? Let's say we're playing Zeri. Last example, and then we're done the video, by the way. Don't worry, guys, if you guys are rushed to do something else with your lives. But let's say you're playing Zeri, right? If you're playing this type of board, and let's say there's another player that is playing Vex, and they already have Sedge 2, for example. This is where sometimes you decide to yourself, okay, well, it's going to be hard for me to be able to roll here because they're holding my units, right? This guy has a Sedge 2, it's hard for me to hit Sejuani. The main idea is that you should always be rolling for one or two things. Like, you should never be rolling without intention. Your rolls should be as efficient as possible. So let's say I'm playing on level 8. If I'm playing on level 8 and I have, for example, MF pair. If I have MF items, this is a pretty important pair. So hitting this MF2 is going to stabilize me and do a lot of work, but I have to decide, do I want to roll for MF having 1 MF on bench and 1 MF on board? Or do I want to try and go to level 9 and roll with better odds? A lot of times it makes sense when you have units that are paired to roll on the lower level. Additionally, if you have multiple unit pairs, for example, Zeri, if I have 2 unit pairs on my bench, I'm basically rolling to 0 every single turn because I spike incredibly hard off hitting either of these units. It doesn't make sense to greed when you have these unit pairs because it's kind of like cashing in your chips, right? You can throw the game by just never cashing in and just like sacrificing HP for no reason, or you can just roll, hit your units, and then decide to move on. Additionally, if you're paired on more than 2 units, or if you're looking for upgrades, like, even if you have low cost units, if you don't have like Mordekaiser 2 with this board, for example, right? Like, if you're rolling for more than one thing, the answer is you should typically be rolling instead of leveling. That's the general rule of thumb. If you're rolling for more than one thing, then you typically want to roll for those things. Now, let's say you play this board and you have no pairs. You have nothing. You have absolutely nothing. If you're not rolling for anything, right? You can't roll and just expect to hit like a double MF shop, right? At that point, it makes sense to just hold on to your gold. You understand that your roll down didn't go that well, and rebuild your econ, right? Rebuild your econ. Hopefully you find a copy of something that incentivizes you rolling, but this is the spot where sometimes people try and go level 9. The point of holding your gold and not rolling isn't to just like teleport to level 9 and roll on level 9. The idea is that you just want to build up your econ such that you have enough to do like a second roll down, the same way you did your main roll down on stage 4. You want to do it like another roll down towards the end of stage 4 or stage 5. This is where the decision becomes a little bit fuzzy, and it entirely depends on your lobby. If your lobby is extremely strong, then you might want to go level 9. If you're not rolling for anything, you might want to go level 9. If you think that you can pivot to playing 5 costs and those 5 costs are going to help your board, then you might want to go level 9. However, if you are weak, you want to stay level 8. If you are not going to cap very high and there's already people with win conditions, you might want to stay level 8 and just roll your gold down. If you don't think that you'll be able to make it to level 9 and then win out from there or get a top 4, roll on level 8. The main thing that you have to always consider is what other people's boards are and what other people have. And that's the main contributing factor to whether you should fast 9 or not. And that's the main takeaway of this video. So, conditions, high HP and high econ, you're high rolling, you can go level 9. Stable on level 8. If you do your level 8 roll down, you have an insane amount of gold, you're high rolling, you high rolled your upgrades, save the gold, go level 9, cap your board higher. If you have augments that allow you or incentivize leveling, sure. That's usually like if you have an encounter that gives you a lot of gold and then some sort of really powerful econ augment like level up, for example. Then you can commit to a level 9 strategy a lot earlier in the game. The main tips, going line is entirely dependent on your lobby. I hope I made that clear throughout the video. And rarely you should itemize towards 5 costs off rip. You should always be considering playing your 4 cost boards and then transitioning to a 5 cost. That's a typical even flow for TFT. And then you always want to gauge whether you should roll for upgrades or use your gold for leveling. You always have to consider that, and a lot of it comes down to how many units you have paired as well as how strong you are relative to the rest of the lobby. If you are stable, if you are winning every fight, don't plunder all your gold. Go level 9, try and hit some 5 costs, especially some of the ones that scale early like Zac and Garen. No matter what your board is, they can fit on your board and scale you really effectively. Stuff like that is really incentivizing. So if you're in a spot where you command a lead, take it and then try and win out. Now let's just quickly go back to like the main question, the reason for a lot of this video. So, talking about having more resources and then like being contested on level 8. These are not things that should alter your decisions on fast 9, right? When I talked about it in the previous guide as well as I talked about in this guide, I didn't really mention like what if you just get a bunch of gold from a hack orb, because it doesn't matter. A lot of it depends on how strong you are relative to the lobby. If you're contested and you're not stable, going level 9 isn't going to help you, right? A lot of times you just got to hope that they die and you got to try and outlive them, and rolling for upgrades is going to be effective. Sometimes you can try and outlive them, right? If you are stronger than them, then you can wait till they die, right? You can hold your gold and go level 9, hit a 5 cost that can stabilize you if there's one that fits your board that does stabilize you, and wait for that person to die and then hit your units, right? Like, there are strategies like that. But if you're contested, it's not like, oh, I'm contested, I guess I'm just going level 9. It's entirely dependent on your board. And additionally, like, obviously in this set, this is a fuzzy picture, but there is a big influx of gold. there's hacked augments, there's loot orb drops. There is a lot of reasons that you might think that you have a good spot to fast 9, but it is not relevant if you are not strong enough to make it there. Even if you have extra gold because you took an augment, all this is like, how do I phrase it? It's like Scuttle Puddle, right? You can't decide to fast 9 in Scuttle Puddle unless you have a setup that allows you to fast 9. You still have to decide on your level 8, did my roll down go good? Then I can fast 9. Or do I have a lot of HP and I'll just won't do a roll down here and I'll just try and go fast 9? Then you can go fast 9. But it still comes down to that stage 4. And that's really important. It doesn't matter how much gold you get dropped from hacks. It doesn't matter how much resources you get from all your other shit. You have to see relative to the lobby where your placement is. That's the main takeaway. Relative to the lobby, if you have a good enough spot to make it to level 9 and not be like 1 life, as well as have a lot of gold to roll for it, then go for it. Always. If not, be careful out there. A lot of times, like, it's a little bit confusing sometimes with the influx of gold, but it's very similar to something like Scuttle Puddle, right? It's why I complain about Scuttle Puddle a lot when I play the game. It's like, if you just pump everybody with extra gold, it usually just favors the high rollers, right? Like, if everybody has a bunch of gold, then, like, you know, the people that have a strong board already will be able to go fast 9. So they'll just get more ahead than you. You can't just match their pace, because if they're already ahead than you and they already have a stronger board than you, it's kind of like you go 9, they go 9, they still have a stronger board than you, and now you just plundered your gold because you don't have enough resources to upgrade everybody, and you would have been better off getting upgrades. That's like a similar experience you have in Scuttle Puddle, right? Somebody high rolls, they're level 9 with like a Zac 2, and you're like rolling to 0 looking for Leona 2 that you can't find it because you low rolled, right? But the influx of gold made it so that they can cap way higher, and you're just kind of like rolling and hoping for the best. That's like a similar thing that can happen in set 14, which I think baits you into thinking you can go 9, but in reality, you still have to evaluate whether or not you're strong, and that's like the main takeaway. And that's just me answering the comments. So, you know, as much as the guide is outdated, or this is a new set, new guide, same core principles hold. So please be careful out there and try your best. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this was fun and enjoyable. I'm not always gonna make a video off comments. This was just one that I had like loaded in the barrel that I was gonna do eventually. I was actually gonna do this guy next week, but I decided just to do it today because I got a phone notification. Sometimes the comments make it to my phone, and I saw this in the morning and I said, you know what, fine, I'll just do this guide today instead of doing what I planned for today, which was black market augments. So I guess tomorrow I'll do black market augments if you're interested in that. So anyways, thanks for watching. Hopefully that was informative. Hopefully it was a little bit helpful, and have fun. See ya. Bye bye.